Forbes. Joining me once again is Blois Olsen. He's a political analyst and publisher of Morning Take. Blois, thank you so much for joining me.
Happy to be here, Brittany.
Blois, you joined me last week for a conversation, and where we were sitting then is certainly a different time for your city and your state than we're sitting at now. Because last week you joined me to talk about Governor Tim Walz dropping his re-election bid. This comes amid the billion-dollar fraud scandal that's embroiling Minnesota's government. And just a few hours after we ended our conversation, news broke that an ICE agent fatally shot a woman in Minneapolis. The shooting of Renee Good sparked anti-ICE protests all throughout Minneapolis, and tensions on the ground in the city really seem to be at a boiling point. It's been described in headlines as a war zone and a military occupation, and the country has been seeing really stunning video of both ICE encounters as well as these protests. You're in Minnesota now, so to start off the conversation, what exactly are you seeing on the ground?
Thanks. I think it is important to just kind of set the scene, is to say that, look, this is a major metropolitan area. It's a state of 6 million people. This is not just happening in the metro area, but it's also only in pockets of our community. For instance, I live 9 minutes from downtown. I have not seen ICE activity in my neighborhood or my community. And I think depending on where you live and frankly how your neighbors are taking any ICE activity is going to determine the tension, the stress, and how it's going to impact your daily life.
President Trump obviously has waded into this conversation, as have many other leaders. But just yesterday, President Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act. That would give him the authority to deploy federal troops to the city. How is that being received?
It just depends on who you talk to. But I think it's a shock to anyone who's, a centrist or trying to find a resolution to this situation. Let's just start with the level of escalation in the last 9 days. ICE had already escalated its presence here, and that had people on edge. And you mentioned a lot of the videos we've seen about ICE encounters. We've heard story after story of random individuals being stopped on the sidewalk. And then when Renee Good was killed, it became clear that tension would be here. Of course, we had George Floyd riots as the epicenter of the George Floyd Black Lives Matters protests of 2020. So Minneapolis is on edge during these moments anyways. And so what I would say is that President Trump's suggestion that he would enact the Insurrection Act was just kind of the next level of escalation. And what I'll tell you here is that the business community, some leaders, the mayor are really working to de-escalate with Washington, are really trying to find a path that the state could work with the federal government to make sure that there was a coordinated effort on any fugitive immigrants that the federal government is seeking. I think one of the pieces that is somewhat mind-boggling is that it was about 8 weeks ago that Secretary Noem came to town and said that they were going to increase their activity here. But it appears as that nobody from the Walz administration or the cities reached out and said, is there a way to work together here? The immediate reaction was the politics of the day. And obviously Democrats, and especially in Minnesota, liberal Democrats base, does not want to do anything with ICE, does not want to do anything with the White House. And so since then, it's just been escalation after escalation after escalation. And I think that's where you begin to kind of see what the tension here is. The mood of the state is just anxious and really wants, a normalization back as soon as we can.